On top of a towering California peak, above mist and fog, high up where the air is the clearest for stargazing. The $10 million apparatus built by the Rockefeller Foundation for the California Institute of Technology. There, the supergiant telescope with a 200-inch mirror to magnify heavenly objects 1,000,000 times, 8 times greater than any other telescope. The moon brought to within 20 miles of the Earth. The secrets of the canals of Mars to be revealed. Maybe even the secret of life. They call it the eye of the world. But wait just a minute, I forgot. It's only a model.
Well, hello everyone. This is Scott Roberts from Explore Scientific and the Explore Alliance, and this is the 38th Astronomical League live program with special guest Don Knabb. Terry Mann's on with me by phone right now. Terry, you want to introduce yourself there?
Hi, I'm Terry Mann. I am the secretary of the league and co-hosting with Scott Roberts for, as he said, the 38th AL Live.
Yeah.
And tonight we have some really interesting talk. I think, is Carroll there?
Carroll is here.
Okay, and Carroll Iorg will be updating us from the league. So, Scott, do you want me to just take over from here?
Yeah, take over, and I will switch over to Carroll here.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, Carol. How are you?
Hello, Terry. Good to be here again.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming. Maybe you would like to update us a little bit on Alcon, a little bit about what's going on in the league.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that. Things are coming on very well. Roughly 9 weeks from now, uh, we will be gathering in Kansas City, actually a little bit less than that, I guess about 7 weeks now, for Alcon 2024. And I'm going to share my screen, Scott.
Okay.
Dates for that convention are July 17th through the 20th. And
Carol, you're not sharing yet.
we're not sharing yet. Okay, let me go back here. Let's see here. I'm getting closer.
Mm-hmm.
How's that?
Not yet.
Not yet, you say?
No.
Okay. All right, let's go. How's that?
Nope, not yet.
Oh, this is the night for technical difficulties, sounds like.
It is the
Yeah,
night
let's
for
see.
technical difficulties.
That's
You
right.
could just talk your way through it if you'd like.
Yeah, I've got one more try, and then we're just going to talk it through that.
Okay, that's cool.
As well. All right. One more try. I don't think that did it either. Okay. Uh, Alcon will be held July 17th through 20th in Kansas City. That will be at the Doubletree by Hilton in Overland Park, Kansas. And the in-person attendance, the fee is for single is $100, couples $150, and youth 18 and under $45. And one of the things we're doing that we've scheduled live for this Alcon for the first time ever is a streaming option. And we've kept the price as the same as the in-person registration to be $100 for single, couples 150, youth 18 and under 45. One of the things that we've heard from time to time, and back in 2021 when we did our virtual only Alcon, we heard that people would like the option of being able to tune in online. Many of our members said they could hear the talks better in many ways by being online than if they were in person. So with that in mind, we have set up that option for this year. And if we get sufficient interest in that, we will have that available as well. Also, the option for lodging is at the Doubletree. And there is a place on our website, astroleague.org, to go directly to registering for the hotel, which is the first step in making sure you have lodging for the event. So I would encourage you all to see us on July 17th through 20th. We have lots of good things going on. Starting with Wednesday night, we will be at Union Station. And one of the features that just came on this week, in fact, was we'll be going there for the planetarium show. But if someone is arriving early in Kansas City, within the next couple of days, they're starting a exhibition about Walt Disney from the early years, his 100th anniversary. He started in Kansas City, and there's a major exhibit there also at Union Station during the visit. It runs through September. So that's something that your family members or yourself, if you have a few spare minutes during Alcon, it would be something very interesting to see. Then one of our main events is on Thursday night, and Dr. David Levy will be at Linda Hall to share his the rare books in the rare book room, but David's own personal telescope, his first telescope, is on loan at the Linda Hall Library, and also his observing logs for his comets that he's discovered. So that should be a very fascinating event. We still have some openings left, so I would encourage you to jump on soon and get registered for that. Then on Friday night, we will be going to Pal Observatory, which is the flagship of the Astronomical Society of Kansas City. And before that, though, we will have the Starbecue at the Overland Park Arboretum. And after that, we'll go on down to Pal Observatory. So there's a lot of different options for everybody as far as speakers. We will have the Star Trek Tim Russo will be there as well. And that promises to be a very fun event as well. So I hope to see a lot of you there, and we will talk to you later. And if you have any information you need, get a hold of us at alcon2024.org. And now back to you, Scott.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So let's go back to Terry here. Terry, I'm going to let you introduce David Levy.
Yep.
And he's got a very special reading he'd like to give. So
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. David, thank you so much for being on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Terry. And it's really wonderful to be here tonight. I have a couple of short poems and proses to read to you. The first one is in Latin, and it is from the official minutes of Galileo's trial in 1632. Et edicto quod dicat veritatem, alias deventur ad torturam. And it officially announces that Galileo is under the threat of torture. We condemn you to the formal prison of this holy office during our pleasure, and by way of salutary penance, you enjoin that for 3 years to come, you repeat once a week the 7 penitential poems. This was a very harsh sentence, and a lot of Galileo's friends actually beseeched the Pope to let Galileo serve out his sentence at his home, which the Pope agreed to. And it kind of never got changed until John Paul II, not that long ago, actually said that the church had made a mistake in condemning probably one of the greatest scientists of all time the way they did. The second one comes from John Milton, Paradise Lost. And he mentions angels and Satan and things, but he also mentions one human. As when by night the glass of Galileo, less assured, observe imagined lands and regions in the moon, or pilot from amidst the Cyclades, Delos or Samos first appear in Thames, a cloudy spot. And finally, we come to Abraham Payas's beautiful biography, magnificent biography of Albert Einstein called Subtle is the Lord. And he has these words to say on Einstein's discovery that the perihelion precession of Mercury's orbit could be explained through general relativity. This discovery was, I believe, by far the strongest emotional experience in Einstein's scientific life, perhaps in all his life. Nature had spoken to him. And on that note, back to you, Terry, and thank you.
Thank you. At least now I can see everybody. I feel it's strange being on the phone because you can't see anybody, and I don't think I like it at all. I still haven't got it on the laptop yet. I'm on my iPad. So welcome everybody. Now I feel more at home. All right. David, thank you. That was beautiful. I'm still having trouble figuring out which end of my iPad I need to look at. Thank you for being there. We really appreciate it. And Carroll, thank you so much for the update on the league. Everybody is looking forward to going to KC. We're going to have a great time there. We always do. So thank you both so much. And Scott, thank you for trying to help me get through all the.
Oh, no problem. No
Yeah,
problem.
well, I appreciate it. So I think what we'll do now is we were going to go to Don Knabb, which I want to read. I'll tell you a little bit about him. I'm going to read a little bit, and some I'm just going to do because I've had the great pleasure of knowing Don for quite a while. But Don Knabb's earliest memories of the stars trace back to the day as a Boy Scout, gazing up at Cassiopeia overhead, and that igniting a deep fascination with the night sky and astronomy. A dedicated enthusiast, Don is an active member of 4 astronomy clubs in the Mid-East Region of the Astronomical League. Notably, his principal affiliation is with the Chester County Astronomical Society, which he joined in 2006. Within a year of becoming a member, he assumed the vital role of observing chair, observing chair, treasurer, and astronomical league coordinator, solidifying his commitment to that organization. In addition to these roles, he later took on the position of educational co-chair. In 2019, during Greenbank StarQuest, Don learned of a pressing need within the Mid-East region of the Astronomical League, which we call MERAL. The current chair faced health challenges and needed to step down. Following a conversation with John Goss at the Greenbank Observatory camping field, Don graciously offered to assume the chair's responsibility, facilitating a smooth transition for the incumbent's chair retirement. Within a year of taking this role, he spearheaded the creation of a dedicated website, Facebook page for MERAL, that enhanced the organization's overall presence. Now, I'm going to add my own information that I do know about Don. He has been involved in many, many league projects. So much, he was a recipient of a special award last year for all of the help he has given the league. So, and I have known Don, and I chair the Great Lakes region. So he helped me design and build the website for the Great Lakes region. He helped design and mostly built the Alcon virtual website. Don's help has been crucial, and it has helped us so much, and we all are familiar and we all know each other now. So Don is just honestly one of the most amazing people I've known. But I'm going to back up just a little bit as a reminder. Greenbank StarQuest is coming up on July 3rd through 6th. If you haven't checked their website, check it out. You're going to really find some of the nicest people there are in astronomy there. There's great food available, and the star party and the facility are amazing. And then on top of that, Don will be giving a talk at Greenbank. So please take a look at their website. The star party is always good, always fun. So Don, with all of that, how about if you go ahead and talk about your talk?
All right. Well, you preempted a little bit of what I'm going to present, but that's
okay. You go right ahead and present it anyway.
So, all right, let me share my screen and see if I can get no gremlins here tonight.
I've got them all, believe me.
Let me start the slideshow. Coming through, Scott?
Coming through.
Okay, so Mount Palomar and the Hale 200-inch telescope. This was the most important telescope in the world from 1949 to 1992. And it's just an amazing, amazing machine. So, but here's what Terry already mentioned this. This is where you preempted me. I'm going to talk about Greenbank StarQuest to put a plug in for it. This is a wonderful event. This is on the last morning, they always take a group picture. This is from a couple of years ago, but it's really fun. My wife and I are going this year. And it's wonderful to camp in the view of this, the world's largest fully steerable radio telescope. And you can do tours. When I toured, we only got up as high as here. Other friends had gone to the very tip top, but the elevator wasn't working, so we went to here. It's an amazing trip, but if you're scared of heights, do not go. Camping field is great. It's large. There's bathrooms nearby. There's showers up the hill. It's a great place. The Science Center, we're going to have our Mid-East Region annual meeting here. It's a really wonderful event. There's a couple hundred people, and there are talks all day long. There's a keynote talk every night, and then there's observing in the field at night. And the sky is excellent. Green Bank is sort of in the middle of nowhere. It's not the end of the earth, but you can see it from there. So it's a wonderful place. So how big is the observatory we're talking about? It is really big. All right. So I'm going to talk about the history of the Hale Telescope and Mount Palomar, and then a walkthrough of a tour that some dear friends of ours and I did a few years ago. So, but it's a really amazing, amazing place. Put it on your bucket list. So the story of the Hale Telescope and Mount Palomar is really the story of one man, and that's this guy, George Ellery Hale. He was driven. He worked to found several significant observatories, and that included Yerkes, Mount Wilson, Palomar, and Hale Solar Observatory. George Ellery Hale built the world's largest telescope 4 times. Every time he built one, it was bigger than the one before. The largest scope in the world, 4 times he did. He hired at Mount Wilson, he hired giants of the field, Harlow Shapley and Edwin Hubble. And they did some of the most amazing scientific work at the time of any time, really. Sadly, George Ellery Hale was a troubled individual. He was tortured. He suffered from insomnia often. He had frequent debilitating headaches. He was possibly schizophrenic. He claimed to have regular visits from an elf who acted as his advisor. So he was a fascinating and tortured individual. He's honored with a crater on Mars named Hale Crater, and one on the moon. There's also the Hale 22-year solar cycle named for him, and asteroid 1024 Hale is named after him. So Yerkes was opened in 1897. It ran for 121 years under the control of the University of Chicago. How many other scientific institutions can you think of that ever operated for 121 years? 2018, it shut down and was sold to or transferred, not even sold, transferred to a nonprofit, the Yerkes Foundation, and then it reopened in 2022 after renovations. So this refractor, to this day, is the largest refractor ever built for night sky observing. Now, I have to qualify that because there is one larger refractor. It's a Swedish one. It's 43 inches, but it's a solar telescope. So to this day, the Yerkes 40-inch refractor is the largest night sky observing telescope ever built, and ever will be built. Ever will be built. So here's a picture of the scope. This is the equatorial mount. And you might recognize one fellow in this picture. Anyone see him? Yes, that is Albert Einstein. Okay, so there he is. Mount Wilson was next. So Hale recognized that he could not build a larger lens for a refractor. So he had to go to reflecting telescopes. Mount Wilson was the first place. This is north of Los Angeles in California. So after he built the world's largest refractor, he built the world's largest reflector at 60 inches, and that was completed in 1908. This is the telescope that was used to measure the size of the Milky Way and where we are in it for the first time. Now, when you look at this picture, anyone who has been to star parties, almost anyone who does astrophotography, you can see this looks to me sort of like a Meade LX200 on a wedge, right? So this is actually an alt-azimuth mount, alternate azimuth and altitude, and this is the part that spins. This will spin in the right ascension axis, and this is the axis here for the declination. So it is a fairly conventional design. It's just huge, all right? He'll abandon that design for the next one, The next largest telescope in the world from 17 to 1949 was the Mount Wilson 100-inch. This is the telescope that Edwin Hubble discovered that galaxies, until then, everyone thought that galaxies were part of the Milky Way. They called them nebulae. They thought there was only one galaxy. Hubble, using redshift, discovered that galaxies are not part of the Milky Way and that the universe is expanding. This shook the scientific world, and this is the telescope he used to do it. So this is a completely different design. I want you to try to remember, look at these yolks, these square structures. This is going to look familiar when we see the 200-inch scope, but there's these two structures, and then this is the declination axis. So the right ascension axis goes up through here. This is the declination axis. So keep that in mind when we see the 200-inch. So, and Hale said, with starlight falling every square mile, the best we could do is gather up area of 100 square inches in diameter. So he said we have to do more than that. So he said he hired people, engineers, to design the 200-inch telescope. So here's a cutaway. This is an amazing drawing. This is done by one of the engineers named Russell Porter. Anyone involved in amateur astronomy probably has heard this guy's name because he was one of the founders of Stellafane Convention in Vermont. And this is the longest running astronomical gathering in the United States. All right, so he was a founder of that. But look at this drawing. This is an incredibly engineering drawing. And anyone who has a equatorial mount knows the polar scope would look right through here to line at the North Star. All right. The declination axis is here. This is the right ascension axis. And if you want to see the size of this thing, that's a man. That gives you some idea of the scale of this project. It was unprecedented. The 200-inch telescope in Mount Palomar, for that generation, it was like the Apollo was for my generation. Okay, maybe what the Hubble is now, or what the James Webb is now. But this was the premier scientific achievement and event of the time. It was all over the news. So Palomar Mountain was picked as a place. Actually, the seeing at Palomar was not as good as Mount Wilson, but it was within a day's travel of Pasadena, because this was going to be run by California Institute of Technology. And they were in Pasadena. This is less than a day's drive. So they picked Palomar Mountain. It's north of San Diego. And it's fairly high. I'm not sure the elevation. This is right before construction started. So in 1934, the roads to Mount Palomar were pretty bad. And it was recognized there was no way that they could be able to haul a huge telescope and a huge mirror up this mountain. So the county of San Diego recognized this was a chance for some real good notoriety. So they said they're going to build a road. After a couple of years, though, they ran out of money and the project stalled. But then the California Department of Highways came in, got together, and they finished the road. So this was called the Highway to the Stars. It was completed in 1937, and it weaves its way up Palomar Mountain. So here is an aerial view of the site. This is the same field that we saw a couple slides ago in snow-covered. Down at the bottom here is the tent city of the construction workers. This white area over here, this is where the observatory is going to be built. And here, these are some of the foundation structures for the observatory. Here's April 1937. Things are starting to roll. Consolidated Steel of Los Angeles did a lot of the construction. I want to point out here, this is September 30th, but these arcs, you can see these forming. When these meet in the middle, these were absolutely essential to the structure, because from this, they suspended a crane capable of lifting 60 tons. And that's what was needed to haul the telescope parts up to the observatory floor. So you can see the arcs there. Here's the dome under construction. It's one of the earlier domes that is already at Mount Palomar. In spring of '83, the shutters were about to go on here, and then the dome would finally be weather tight, be be fully enclosed. Again, this is the crew from Consolidated Steel working on the dome. And here is the completed dome ready to receive the 200-inch telescope. This looks like something from a science fiction movie of the 50s. I expect to see a giant ant or a Godzilla come crawling over the mountain at any moment to attack the observatory. So here's the semblance. Now this is up above. Here is the crane. This is a hole in the floor, lifting the parts of the telescope up using that 60-ton crane to bring the parts to the observatory floor. And by the way, before I forget to mention, Palomar Observatory and Caltech were very generous in letting me use these historic images. I contacted them, and their media rep, Steve Flanders, was very, very helpful in getting me these images to use. So here, now if you remember back to that picture of the 100-inch telescope, the square boxes, this is the equivalent on the 200-inch. These are round tubes instead of square. So this is part of the yoke and the truss assembly. So here is the telescope assembly. Again, this is what in the previous scope they were square tubes. This is essentially the right ascension axis. So this points up toward the North Star. This is the bearing for the declination axis. It was hydrostatic, so it actually had oil pumped through it as it turned. It was practically frictionless. And in case you haven't noticed them yet, there's a man. That tells you the size of this structure. It is unbelievable. Again, the Apollo project of the era. So late 39, the dome was completed, the scope was installed, but it was going to take several years to get this thing installed and working. Now I'll show you a quick picture. You can see on the camera here. This is a book called The Perfect Machine. I'll admit I haven't read the whole thing yet, but this machine really was the perfect machine. It is such a machine of precision and strength and size. It's the perfect machine. There's a man there, give you the size of this whole structure.
Wow.
So let's talk about the mirror for a moment. This is actually my wife and I, that's her over here on the right, quite a few years ago, probably 15 years ago, toured the Corning Museum of Glass in Corning, New York. The first mirror, they tried to make the mirror, General Electric tried to make it out of quartz. They were unable to. After spending about $500,000, they pulled the plug on that and went to Corning Glass Company. They had just developed this brand new glass that if any one of you go into your kitchen, you could probably find some of it right now, called Pyrex. So this mirror is made out of Pyrex. They started with 30-inch, they did the 60 and 120, developing the technology wasn't developed. They had to develop the technology as they went. One of the biggest problems, these holes are there to reduce the weight of the glass. Otherwise, it would deflect and deform under its own weight. These were fused silica, and they could take the heat, but the supports for them could not. They finally ended up going to steel. The first mirror failed. This is the failed mirror, and you can see the cracks in it. They sorted out the technology. Again, as any real advancement in science, they developed it as they went forward. And they were able to get the second mirror. And it was at the time the largest piece of glass ever made, the largest single piece of glass ever made. And again, this was a media event. They shipped the mirror from Corning, New York by train out toward the area of Pasadena, and then it was moved by truck. I gave this talk a few years ago at an assisted living facility west of Philadelphia, and one of the attendees remembered watching this mirror go past where he lived. I'm not sure if by train or by truck in California, but he remembers seeing the mirror go by. So here, the mirror was taken to Pasadena, where Caltech has an optical lab, and this is them doing the grinding. The grinding took 13 years, and they had to remove 4.5 tons of glass. That's how much of a project this was. Here's the finished mirror, and in 1948, see, they dedicated the scope before the mirror was even finished. This is the dedication ceremony. Now, sadly, George Ellery Hale, who was really the man who made this telescope happen, he passed away in 1938. So to honor him, they named this the Hale Telescope. So here's a picture of the crowd under this telescope. So now we can see sort of the design of this thing. These round tubes are what was square on the earlier design. This is the scope itself. It is hanging on these bearings. This is the declination axis. This is the right ascension axis. And again, another shot of the dedication ceremony. There's not many telescopes you can think of that are observatories that are honored on a stamp. But in 1948, the United States government issued a stamp just to honor Mount Palomar. Again, the Apollo shot of the time. So now I'm going to go into today's Mount Palomar. Okay, this is one of the most magnificent structures in all of astronomy. All right, so history is done. Now we're going to look at today's scope. And this was a tour that my wife and I and some friends took a few years ago. A quick look at a couple pictures. So here's the Orion Nebula. Here's the Helix Nebula. And here is the Jellyfish Nebula, supernova remnant IC 433. These pictures were not taken by Mount Palomar. Maybe you thought they were, but they were not. These were taken by this man here. This is my dear friend, Brent Crabb. He and his wife, Mary, who's to Brent's right, live in, and that's my wife, Barbara, behind Brent, about to push him down the hill, I think. They live in Fountain Valley, which is close enough to Disneyland that when the fireworks go off at the end of the night, you can hear them. Okay, so they live in tremendously light polluted skies, but somehow Brent, being the astrophotography wizard that he is, he gets pictures like I just showed you a couple slides back. He is very talented, very amazing engineer. So this is our tour group. You get to Mount Palomar, you need to sign up for a tour. There's a visitor center to go through. The drive from Brent and Mary's house was a little over 2 hours. Brent drove us there in his van. And this is the current highway to the stars. It's come a long way from what it was back in the 1930s. But you go up and up and up the mountain till you get to the top, and not far from the top, there is this magnificent structure. It's just to stand and look at it, it just makes you in awe. The only thing I can compare this to, I mean, I remember the emotions I felt when I saw this. The only thing I can compare it to is after this visit, another visit, we went to California with Brent and Mary. They took us to see up in Los Angeles, one of the space shuttles was on display. I forget which one it was now, maybe Endeavour, I'm not sure. But similar emotion. I remember standing underneath the space shuttle and just being overcome with emotion. It nearly brought me to tears. Same thing with Mount Palomar. Put this on your list. If you're an amateur astronomer and if in any way you can ever get to see this telescope and this structure, you owe it to yourself to do it. It is an unforgettable experience. So here's the a current day overhead view, and right here is where the visitor center is, parking lot visitor center. Then the tours usually you have to wait. It takes some time to get in. You have to wait your turn. They collect people, then you can mill around. We walk down and we're milling around the telescope. I want to point out one special thing. Here's a bit of a close-up. Some of these structures, like this water tower, they're from the very beginning when Palomar was built. They're still there. But I want to draw your attention to this little round piece down here. Take a look at that. I'll zoom in on it. This was a concrete mirror blank. They cast out our concrete and estimated the same weight as the 200-inch mirror because they were unwilling to risk the mirror in balancing the scope. As anyone knows who sets up an equatorial mount, you have to balance the scope. And this scope is no different than that. It needs to be perfectly balanced so that actually a surprisingly small motor can move it. So they use this concrete blank that you see down here in the picture. But we're milling around here waiting for the tour to start. It's kind of warm, so it served another purpose. All right, that's the blank. So another purpose. It's also a nice resting spot while you're waiting for your tour to start. So that's my wife waiting for the tour, catching some snooze before the tour starts. So just a few specs, the specifications. The upper dome, 1,000 tons. That's about 500 SUVs. Okay, that's what this upper dome weighs. Each of these doors weighs about as much as 60 SUVs weighs. Okay, and like all of us know, glass mirror is affected by temperature. 4-foot spacing between the inner and outer wall to try to insulate the building, and that's why it's painted white. to reflect the sunlight to try to keep the daytime heating to a minimum. So the Hale Telescope used what's called a horseshoe mount. Now, here is the horseshoe, okay? That is the horseshoe part. So it's held up by this yoke that replaces a polar bearing. You could never have a polar bearing strong enough. So again, this is the right ascension axis, and then there's bearings here. That is the declination axis for the telescope. Mirror, of course, at the bottom. And I was surprised. I visited the founder of our local astronomy club a few weeks ago. In his apartment, he has a model. He didn't build it. This was built by his father. Now, Ed Lurcott, the founder of our club, is 95. So you can imagine if his father built this, how old this model is. You know, I was growing up, I was building Redstone rocket models or XB-70 supersonic, bomber models. But he was building, this is the model built back then. That's how popular this telescope was. And surprising, why is the train there, you might ask? What's that train doing there? The telescope and the train are the same scale. So that gives you an idea of the size of this amazing telescope, this perfect machine. So a lot of people call Mount Palomar the Cathedral of Astronomy. And when you're in there, you have the feeling of being in a cathedral. So what was first light? All right, it was NG 2261, Hubble's Variable Nebula. It was image. This is not the image, but this is an image of that nebula, but not the image it was taken. So who do you think they put in charge of the first light imaging? None other than Edwin Hubble. It only made sense, right? So, there's first light with the largest telescope in the world. So it has done many things, and it's maybe been eclipsed by other telescopes at this point. What took over from the 200-inch was the Keck telescope in Hawaii. That's what, 300 some inches, I think. But quasars were first identified by spectra from the Hale Telescope. When Halley's Comet came back in 1982, it was found. This is not the image. This is an image of Halley's Comet, but the Hale Telescope was used in 1980, 4 years before it actually returned. They picked it up on the Hale Telescope. And as recent as this April, okay, December 2023, the Hale Telescope started is the receiving antenna for NASA's Psyche mission. Now, if you remember this, the Psyche mission is going to a metal-rich, dense asteroid, okay? And so the Hale Telescope is acting as the receiving antenna for a laser experiment. So to this day, this telescope is still functioning, active, very important scientific instrument. So just last month, the Psyche spacecraft sent a message by laser 140 million miles to the Hale Telescope. So this is far from being an obsolete piece of equipment. It is up to date. So they park the telescope standing up during the day, and the mirror can be lowered, and that is done every 2 years. Here's the mirror. Every 2 years is lowered because it has to be like anyone who has a reflecting telescope knows every once in a while you have to clean and sometimes recoat. So they strip it and recoat it every 2 years. And here's the mirror entirely stripped. And here's a good picture of this is the top is the before the cleaning and resurfacing, and here's the after. You just look at the quality of the reflections. You can see very easily how much the refinishing has refurbished the mirror. Another view looking up at the giant truss tubes.
Can I interrupt you for a minute, Don?
Sure.
I'm not seeing any slides. Does everybody else have slides?
I see his presentation.
I do. Okay, I'll see what happened here because I don't have it. Okay,
Got it,
thanks.
Scott?
Sorry, Don.
That's great. I'm monitoring it on an iPad, and I see him coming through. So I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's all good.
sorry.
That's okay. So here's the horseshoe we saw earlier, and this is what supports the horseshoe for it to rotate to span the sky. Of course, this is the declination axis. Then you can go up, and the part of the tour you go up above. This is the level of the dome now. You can see this is the dome floor, and you can look down the telescope. And here is the prime focus gauge. So astronomers would spend all night in the prime focus gauge. I'm not sure what they went to the bathroom, but I guess they figured something out. I guess they would have to, but they would spend all night up here. You know, this scope had tremendous accuracy, but they still needed to make sure it was aiming at the target with very high accuracy. So there was no such thing as automatic guiding in this time. So people would spend their entire night up in this prime focus cage. So you can walk around once you're up, and they let you go outside of the dome, and you can go all the way around. The view is amazing. We're going to talk about this telescope, this dome, and the telescope in a few minutes. But it was an incredible view. What you don't want to do, if you're afraid of heights, you don't want to do this because it's an open grate. And if you're afraid of heights, you probably don't want to take this part of the tour. So I want to spend one more telescope we're going to talk about. It's actually decommissioned, but Mount Palomar is so significant in the world of astronomy. I want to talk about the 18-inch Schmidt camera at Mount Palomar. And this ties into Dr. David Levy, who's one of our co-hosts tonight. This is the dome that had the 18-inch Schmidt camera. It was built in 1936 and was the first operational telescope. It was decommissioned in the mid-2000, like 2006 or so, decommissioned, but it operated for many, many years. Here it is in the shop at Caltech. Okay. And this scope had a film area that's 9 degrees in diameter. That's the size of 17 full moons. So David Levy and many astronomers, but David Levy, along with Gene and Carolyn Shoemaker, did a lot of imaging with this scope. And this is when they discovered Comet Shoemaker-Levy. This was big news back when it was discovered. They did it with the 18-inch Schmidt telescope. So here's a photo. This is not from the 18 Schmidt, but that is the telescope they used to discover the comet. And that discovery alone could be a story for an hour presentation. It is an amazing story, worth reading Dave's autobiography just to get that story. And it's an incredible story of discovery and perseverance. But here's a composite photo that was assembled from Hubble Space Telescope. This is Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, and it is a series of broken up comet. Is a series of blobs of comet hurtling toward Jupiter. You can see the shadow of one of the moons on Jupiter, or maybe that's the moon in front. I guess there's the moon, there's the shadow. Okay, so this is a photo. I attended NEAF where Explore Scientific was set up, and Astronomical League, and Teleview, and many, many other. This is the Northeast Astronomy Forum in Suffern, New York. Just this past April, David Levy gave her a wonderful presentation, and he is holding the original films of the discovery of Shoemaker-Levy 9. Now, why is Shoemaker-Levy 9 so important? So why was it in the news for months and months? Well, it's because of what could have happened to us. So I'm going to suggest that this is the most frightening photo of all time. So this is taken with the Hubble after Shoemaker-Levy 9 slammed into Jupiter. Why is it frightening? Because this is the size of the Earth. Okay, this is the same scale. If one of those, just a piece of one of these fragments had, instead of being caught by Jupiter, had hit the Earth, we wouldn't be having this presentation tonight. None of us would be here. That would make this would make the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs look like a rock thrown into a pond. So this is, I'm going to suggest, the most frightening photograph of all time. So I'm going to finish up just two other photos here of some of my favorite photos of Mount Palomar. Again, thank you to Palomar Observatory and Caltech for letting me use these photos. That's one with the moon over top of it, and here's one with the star trails at night. And a last tribute to George Ellery Hale, his famous quote, make no small plans, dream no small dreams. And that's it. I will stop to share, Scott.
Okay, great.
That was fantastic, Don. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, I haven't been to Palomar in a long, long time. I mean, just walking on the grounds, you feel like you're really somewhere special.
It's hallowed ground. It really is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
When you're inside, it feels like you're in a temple. It just really does.
Yeah, the cathedral
Yep.
of astronomy. Yeah,
That's
it really
right.
does. It really does feel like that. It really does.
Yep.
Yeah, and being up there at night, because I went up there at night when I was there too. I don't know, it just feels, you just feel like you're part of history almost being there at night. Everything seems to change except that big wide observatory.
Yeah, yeah. It's something you have to do. You owe it to yourself if you're an amateur astronomer to see Mount Palomar.
Definitely. Definitely. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I
Anything?
mean, people commented that they love Palomar.
Yeah.
That some people have visited there. Lori says we thoroughly enjoyed a tour of the Palomar facility several years ago. It was definitely worth a trip. And other people that will watch this after this live portion runs, I'm sure will comment and talk about their experience at Palomar. It definitely has that special feeling. So.
Wasn't Palomar the observatory that was in danger when they had the fire a couple years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago when there was a fire? Or was that Wilson?
It has been close to fire before.
Yeah.
It is, but I think what you're remembering is the Mount Wilson Observatory that
I
had
bet.
flames actually lapping up at the observatory buildings. So
And Griffith,
Yeah.
Griffith was also in danger. The Griffith.
that's right.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, in LA. Yeah, that and Mount Wilson were both in. And that's why I want to go on the next trip out there to California. I want to go to Mount Wilson with Brent and Mary.
Okay. You'll love it.
Yeah, I
Oh,
wanna
you'll
go
feel
there.
like you're
The history
standing in
even feels
history.
richer when you're there,
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just has that feeling because it just does. They're all amazing places. David, I think you had your hand up that you wanted to say something.
I do want to say something. Don, your lecture was excellent with
Thank
a
you, David.
capital E and a capital T. It is so wonderful.
Thank you. It means a
you are
lot to hear you
correct.
say that.
You are certainly correct that the 60-inch was the largest telescope in the world for a time. However, earlier than that, there was the Leviathan of Parsonstown, a 72-inch in
Right.
the 19th century that was there, but it was decommissioned by the time the 60-inch was put on. And then after that, the Dominion Astrophysical Observatory put up the 72-inch, which was the largest telescope in the world for 2 months.
2
And then
months.
after that, it said never again. And 2 months later, the 100-inch Hooker telescope opened, and then came the 200-inch.
Yeah.
Wonderful, superior, excellent presentation. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, David. It means a lot to hear you say that.
Don, I have to agree with you. That picture of Shoemaker Levy 9, oh my gosh. I remember seeing that when it came out. And I mean, it was a scary thing because for the next couple of months, all I thought about was, wow, if that would have happened to Earth,
Yeah.
what would that have been like? And for quite a while, it was a real scary feeling. And there's always still a possibility. You never know what's going to happen. But that picture really brought it home,
Yeah.
It made you think.
Yep.
And it will happen to the Earth one day. We don't know
Yep.
when, but that will happen at some point in the future.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
long way in the
it's
future,
through the
right?
efforts of David Levy and the Shoemakers that gave Congress the wake-up call. That this is a real thing. This could really happen. Okay, we're watching it happen to another planet. Not might be us one day, but will be us one day. Okay, and if we can do something, we should. And so, I directly attribute the DART mission, the Double Asteroid Redirect mission, to the genesis of that had to have occurred with David Levy and the Shoemakers, and they're not only their work in understanding, with gene, of course, impacts, but this whole team, to to show the world that impacts are a real thing. You know, it's not something that just happened a long time ago, but they're happening now. Okay, they will continue to happen, and you know, humans are amazing in that they can figure out how to do things, and so we moved an asteroid. I'm sure there'll be other missions where we'll move other large bodies in our solar system, so just to protect us. So you know, I owe you know, deep gratitude to the Levy Shoemaker team for making that wake up call happen to Congress. So
I think we all do. Yeah, that was incredible.
yep.
It
Well, the
was.
day that they actually
Yeah,
move something that was going to hit us, we will. I think that there'll be statues made, you know, big statues made to Levy and Shoemakers, you know, in gratitude.
Oh, I
So
hope not.
500 feet tall. Yes. Hmm.
Oh my gosh. Oh, all right. Well, I guess that might be it for the evening. Thank you. I'll thank all the speakers, Don, David, Carol, Scott, thank you for being here. And thank you, everybody out there watching. We really do appreciate it. And we will be back on June 14th with Dean Regas. And he will be speaking about being the astronomer out at Grand Canyon. So that will be very interesting. We won't have an AL Live in July. We'll probably just get online and broadcast a little bit with Scott at Alcon. So that will be, as Carol said, July 17th through the 20th, right, Carol?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and Scott will be there doing interviews with the speakers. And so we will be out there, and I might see if I can't join Scott a little bit to talk a little bit about what's going on.
Yep. Very welcome. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, thank you all. And Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you to close.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much, Terry.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the audience that tuned in on this Friday. It's here in the United States. It's Monday will be Memorial Day. Explore Scientific will be closed, so I just want to announce that. But we'll be back on Tuesday, and I'm pretty excited about the upcoming Alcon myself. You know, if you've never been, you got to go. You know, because if it'll be your first time, you might see some of your friends, but you're going to make a lot more new friends. So it's really a fascinating gathering of astronomers and presentations and awards and all the rest of it. So, and if you can't make it, you will be able to log in and watch it virtually as well. I think there's a small fee for doing that, but anyhow, thanks again, and you guys keep looking up. Good night.